The snow fell gently outside my window, each flake catching the dim glow of the street lamp before settling into the quiet night. At 72, I'd seen enough winters to know they could be both beautiful and cruel, much like the ties that bind a family. My small apartment, tucked in a modest corner of Burlington, Vermont, was warm, but there was a chill in my heart that no heater could touch. The holidays were approaching, and with them, the ache of a conversation that still lingered like frost on glass. It had been 3 weeks since my daughter, Emily, called. Her voice, usually bright and threaded with laughter, had been tight, hesitant. "Mom, I'm so sorry," she'd said, her words tumbling out in a rush. "Mark thinks, well, he thinks it's best if we keep the holidays small this year. Just us and the kids. You understand, right?" I'd nodded, though she couldn't see me, my throat too thick to respond. Mark, her husband of 10 years, had drawn a line, and I was on the wrong side of it. I sat at my kitchen table, a chipped mug of chamomile tea cooling in my hands. The apartment was modest but mine-filled with relics of a life well lived, a faded quilt from my mother, a shelf of books I'd read to Emily when she was small, and a single-framed photo of her wedding day, where I stood beaming beside her, unaware of the distance that would grow between us. Mark had been charming then, all smiles and promises. Now, his charm felt like a mask, one I'd seen slip more times than I cared to count. The phone rang, shattering the silence. I glanced at the screen. Emily's name. My heart lifted, then sank. Calls this late were rarely good news. "Mom." Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "Can we talk?" I braced myself, expecting another apology, another excuse. But what came next was something I hadn't anticipated. "Mark and I, we're in a bit of trouble," she said, her words halting. "The business isn't doing well, and we need a loan. A big one. The bank won't approve it unless we have a co-signer." She paused, and I could hear the weight of her next words before she spoke them. "We were hoping you could help." I stared at the steam rising from my tea, curling and vanishing into the air. My savings, modest but carefully guarded, were all I had to keep me afloat in my later years. Co-signing a loan meant risking it all, not just the money, but the fragile thread of trust between me and my daughter. And yet, the thought of saying no felt like severing that thread entirely. "Emily," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside, "let me think about it." She agreed, her relief palpable even through the phone. As I hung up, I looked around my quiet apartment, the walls echoing with memories of Christmases past, Emily's laughter as she tore open presents, the warmth of our small family before Mark entered the picture. Now, I was an outsider in my own daughter's life, yet they needed me to anchor their future. Sleep eluded me that night. I thought of my late husband, David, who'd always known how to navigate Emily's stubborn streak. He'd been gone 5 years now, and the hole he left still ached like a bruise. I wondered what he'd say about Mark's request, about this fracture in our family. Probably something wise and gentle, like, "Eleanor, love is patient, even when it hurts." But patience was a currency I was running low on. The next morning, I walked to the local diner, a ritual I'd kept since David's passing. The familiar jingle of the bell above the door greeted me, and I slid into my usual booth, where the waitress, Clara, poured me coffee without asking. "You look like you're carrying the world, Eleanor," she said, her eyes kind but prying. I smiled weakly, unsure how to explain the tangle of emotions: betrayal, duty, love that had kept me up all night. As I sipped my coffee, I replayed Emily's words. Mark's business, a small construction company, had been struggling for years. He'd always been ambitious, chasing big contracts with little regard for the risks. Emily had believed in him, pouring her energy into supporting his dreams. I'd watched from the sidelines, offering advice when asked. But Mark had a way of dismissing me, his polite smiles never reaching his eyes. Now, they needed me. Not for holiday dinners or grandmotherly moments with my grandkids, Lily and Ethan, but for my name on a dotted line. The irony stung. I thought of Lily's gap-toothed smile, Ethan's endless questions about the stars' moments I'd been robbed of this holiday season. Yet here I was, holding the key to their parents' financial survival. I left the diner and walked home through the snow, my boots crunching against the sidewalk. The town was alive with holiday preparations lights strung across shop windows, carols drifting from open doors. I wanted to feel that warmth, to believe in the magic of the season. But all I felt was the weight of a decision I wasn't ready to make. Back in my apartment, I pulled out my financial records, a habit born of years managing a household on a teacher's salary. The numbers were stark, enough to live comfortably, but not extravagantly. Co-signing the loan could jeopardize everything me home, my independence. But saying no might mean losing Emily, not just for the holidays, but for good. I closed the ledger and pressed my hands to my face, the silence of my apartment louder than ever. As the day faded into evening, I lit a single candle, a small defiance against the darkness creeping into my heart. I thought of Emily as a child, her small hand in mine as we walked through snow-covered streets, her laughter a melody I'd never tire of. That girl was still in there, I told myself, buried beneath the weight of her husband's choices. Maybe this loan was a chance to reach her, to rebuild what we'd lost. But as I blew out the candle and prepared for another sleepless night, a question lingered. Could I save my daughter without losing myself? The next few days blurred together, each one heavy with the decision I hadn't yet made. I kept my routine morning walks to the diner, afternoons with my books, evenings knitting scarves for Lily and Ethan, though I wasn't sure they'd ever wear them. The holidays were a week away, and the town's festive cheer felt like a mockery of my solitude. Every twinkling light, every wreath on a door, reminded me of what I'd been denied. I hadn't spoken to Emily since her call, though her words echoed in my mind. I wanted to call her, to ask why Mark had shut me out, to demand the truth behind their financial mess. But pride or maybe fear kept my hand from the phone. Instead, I found myself digging through old photo albums, seeking solace in memories of better days. One photo stopped me cold. Emily, 6 years old, perched on David's shoulders as we decorated our Christmas tree. Her eyes sparkled with delight, her tiny hands clutching a star ornament. I'd been pregnant with her when David and I married, young and scared but full of hope. We'd built a life together, modest but rich in love, and Emily had been the heart of it. Even after David's passing, she and I had clung to each other, our bond a lifeline through grief. When had that changed? I traced my finger over the photo, my chest tight. Mark had entered our lives a decade ago, a whirlwind of confidence and ambition. Emily had been smitten, her eyes bright in a way I hadn't seen since her father. I'd wanted to believe in him, for her sake. But there were moments small, sharp ones that had planted doubts. The way he'd interrupt her stories, the dismissive tone when I offered advice, the way he'd steer conversations away from family traditions toward his own plans. And now, this, barring me from their home while asking for my help. The phone rang again, pulling me from my thoughts. It was Emily, her voice softer this time, almost fragile. "Mom, have you thought about the loan?" she asked, skipping pleasantries. I could hear the strain in her words, the unspoken plea. "Mark's meeting with the bank tomorrow. They need an answer." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Emily, why didn't you tell me things were this bad? I asked, keeping my tone gentle. And why? Why can't I come for the holidays? What's really going on? There was a long pause, the kind that carries 1,000 unsaid things. It's complicated, Mom, she finally said. Mark's been under a lot of pressure. He thinks a quiet holiday will help us focus on the kids, on fixing things. It's not about you. But it felt like it was. I wanted to press her, to demand answers. But the tremor in her voice stopped me. I'll go to the bank with you tomorrow, I said instead. Let's talk it through. She agreed, her relief palpable. And we hung up with promises to meet in the morning. The bank was a cold, sterile place, all glass and polished wood. Emily looked small beside Mark, her shoulders hunched as he spoke to the loan officer with practiced ease. I sat quietly, my hands folded in my lap, listening as he outlined their plan, a loan to cover debts from a failed project, to keep the business afloat. His voice was steady, but his eyes flicked to me too often, gauging my reaction. The loan officer, a young woman with sharp eyes, turned to me. Mrs. Harper, as the co-signer, you'd be responsible if the primary borrowers default. Do you understand the risks? I nodded, though my stomach churned. My savings, my security, could be wiped out if Mark's business failed again. But Emily's eyes, wide and hopeful, held me in place. After the meeting, we stepped outside into the biting December air. Mark clapped a hand on my shoulder, his smile too wide. Thanks, Eleanor. This means a lot. I forced a smile, but his touch felt like a weight I couldn't shake. Emily hugged me, her arms trembling. I'm so sorry, Mom, she whispered. I'll make this right. As I walked home alone, the snow falling thicker now, I thought of the Christmases we'd spent together, Emily's laughter, David's warmth, the way our little family had felt unbreakable. Now, I was risking everything for a daughter who felt like a stranger, and a son-in-law who saw me as a means to an end. The thought gnawed at me, but so did the flicker of hope that this might bring us closer. That evening, I sat by my window, watching the snow blanket the world outside. I thought of Lily and Ethan, their faces bright with holiday excitement in years past. I wanted to be part of their lives, to be the grandmother who baked cookies and told stories, not the one relegated to the sidelines. But love, I reminded myself, sometimes meant sacrifice. I just didn't know how much I was willing to give. The bank called 2 days later to confirm the loan paperwork. My signature was needed, a final step to bind me to Mark and Emily's debt. I sat at my kitchen table, the documents spread before me like a map to an uncertain future. The numbers were daunting 6 figures, more than I'd ever imagined risking. I traced the lines with my finger, each clause a reminder of what I stood to lose. I called Emily, hoping to hear reassurance, but Mark answered instead. Eleanor, we're counting on you, he said, his tone smooth but edged with urgency. This is our chance to turn things around. I murmured something noncommittal and hung up, my heart pounding. His confidence grated, a stark contrast to Emily's quiet desperation. I needed clarity, so I bundled up and walked to the park, where the snow had transformed the world into a quiet, white expanse. Children laughed as they built snowmen, their voices carrying a joy I envied. I sat on a bench, my breath visible in the cold air, and thought of my own childhood simpler times, when trust came easily, and family was a given, not a negotiation. David had always been my anchor in moments like this. He'd have known what to say, how to balance love with caution. I closed my eyes, imagining his voice. Eleanor, trust your heart, but don't ignore your head. I wanted to help Emily, to be the mother she needed. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Mark was using her as much as he was using me. When I returned home, I found a voicemail from Emily. "Mom, I know this is a lot to ask," she said, her voice breaking. "I promise we'll pay you back. I need you to believe in us." Her words pierced me, stirring memories of the little girl who'd once believed I could fix anything. I wanted to believe in her now, but doubt clung to me like the cold. The next day, I met Emily at a cafe near the bank. She looked exhausted, her eyes shadowed, her smile forced. "Mark's been working late," she said, stirring her coffee absently. "He's trying so hard." "Mom." I nodded, unsure how to respond. I wanted to ask about their marriage, about the tension I'd sensed, but the words felt too heavy. Instead, I asked about the kids. Her face lit up, and for a moment, she was my Emily again, animated and warm. "Lily's obsessed with drawing now," she said, "and Ethan keeps asking about the stars, like you used to teach him." My heart ached at the mention of my grandkids, their absence a wound that hadn't healed. "Emily," I said carefully, "if I sign this loan, I need to know you're okay. Not just the business you." She looked away, her fingers tightening around her mug. "I'm fine, Mom," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. I reached for her hand, and she let me hold it, her skin cold against mine. We walked to the bank together, the loan documents waiting like a guillotine. The officer reviewed the terms again, her voice clinical as she outlined the risks. I glanced at Emily, her eyes pleading, and felt the weight of her trust. I signed the papers, my hand steady despite the tremor in my soul. It was done. Mark met us outside, his grin triumphant. "You're a lifesaver, Eleanor," he said, clapping my shoulder again. I forced a smile, but his touch felt like a brand. Emily hugged me tightly, whispering, "Thank you, Mom." I held her close, praying I hadn't made a mistake. That night, I dreamed of David, his face clear as if he were still here. He didn't speak, but his eyes held a quiet warning. I woke with a start, the room dark and silent, the weight of my decision heavier than ever. I'd given Emily what she asked for, but at what cost? Christmas Eve arrived, and my apartment felt emptier than ever. I'd hung a small wreath on my door, a nod to the season, but the holiday spirit eluded me. The loan was finalized, the money transferred to Mark's business account, but the rift between us remained. I hadn't heard from Emily since the bank, and Mark's silence was deafening. I busied myself baking cookies, the kind Lily loved with extra chocolate chips. I packaged them carefully, along with the scarves I'd knitted, and drove to Emily's house, a 30-minute trip through snow-dusted streets. Their home was a charming colonial, its windows glowing with holiday lights. I parked across the street, my heart pounding as I debated whether to knock. Through the window, I saw them: Emily, Mark, Lily, and Ethan, gathered around a tree sparkling with ornaments. They were laughing, their faces lit with a warmth I hadn't felt in months. I clutched the package, my breath catching. This was the family I'd sacrificed for. Yet I stood outside, an uninvited guest. I left the package on their porch. My note simple, for Lily and Ethan. Love, Grandma. I drove home, tears blurring the road. The exclusion stung, but it was Emily's silence that hurt most. Had my sacrifice meant nothing? Days passed, blending into the new year. I returned to my routine, but the ache persisted. Then, one afternoon, Emily appeared at my door, her face pale and drawn. "Mom, can I come in?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, stepping aside. my heart racing with hope and dread. We sat at my kitchen table, the same chipped mug between us. "I'm sorry I haven't called," she said, her eyes fixed on the table. "Things have been hard." I waited, sensing she needed to unburden herself. Slowly, she began to talk about Mark's late nights, his growing temper, the way he'd shut her out of decisions about the business. "He used the loan money," she said, her voice breaking. "But not for what he promised. He invested in another project, one he didn't tell me about. It's failing, Mom. We're worse off than before." I felt a surge of anger, not just at Mark, but at myself for trusting him. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice sharper than intended. She flinched, and I softened, reaching for her hand. "Emily, I'm here. I've always been here." She cried then, her sobs shaking her small frame. I held her, the way I had when she was a child, and for a moment, the years melted away. But the reality of our situation loomed. Me savings were tied to Mark's failure, and Emily was caught in the middle. "I don't know what to do," she whispered. "I love him, but I'm losing myself." Her words echoed my own fears, and I realized how much we'd both sacrificed for a man who didn't deserve it. I wanted to tell her to leave him, to take the kids and start over, but I knew she wasn't ready to hear it. Instead, I said, "You're stronger than you think, Emily, and you're not alone." She nodded, her eyes searching mine for the certainty I wasn't sure I had. But for the first time in months, we were talking, really talking, and that was a start. Winter deepened, the snow piling high outside my window. Emily and I began talking more, tentative steps toward rebuilding what we'd lost. She'd visit when Mark was at work, bringing Lily and Ethan sometimes. Their laughter filled my apartment, a balm for the wounds of the past months. But the shadow of the loan hung over us, a reminder of the risks we'd taken. I hired a lawyer, a quiet man named Thomas who specialized in financial disputes. He reviewed the loan agreement, his face grim as he outlined my options. "If Mark defaults, you could lose everything," he said. "But there's a chance to renegotiate the terms, to protect your assets." It was a slim hope, but I clung to it, for Emily's sake as much as my own. Meanwhile, Emily was unraveling the truth about Mark's business. She'd found emails, invoices, evidence of his reckless investments. "He lied to me, Mom," she said one evening, her voice steady despite the pain. "I thought I was helping him, but I was just enabling him." I admired her courage, but I saw the toll it took. She was torn between her love for Mark and her need to protect her children. I wanted to shield her, to take away the pain, but I knew this was her battle. All I could do was stand beside her. One night, she called, her voice urgent. "Mom, Mark's gone. He left a notice, taken what's left of the loan money, and disappeared." My heart sank, but a strange relief followed. Mark's absence was a chance for Emily to reclaim her life, but it also meant the loan was now her burden and mine. We met with Thomas the next day. He was blunt. The bank would come for me if Emily couldn't pay. My savings, my home, everything I'd worked for was at risk. But Emily's determination gave me strength. "I'll find a way, Mom," she said, her eyes fierce. "I won't let you lose everything because of me." She took a second job, working nights at a local hospital, and enrolled in a bookkeeping course to manage the business herself. I watched her transform, her resilience a mirror of the strength I'd tried to instill in her. Lily and Ethan spent more time with me, their presence a reminder of what we were fighting for. As spring approached, the snow began to melt, revealing patches of green beneath. Emily and I grew closer, our bond forged in the fire of hardship. We laughed more, shared stories of David, and made plans for a new kind of holiday, one where family meant more than appearances. But the threat of the loan remained, a shadow we couldn't outrun. I sold some of my mother's jewelry, small heirlooms that hurt to part with, to cover legal fees. Emily worked tirelessly, her exhaustion evident but her spirit unbroken. Together, we faced the uncertainty, holding fast to the love that had always defined us. By summer, the world felt lighter, the days longer and warmer. Emily had taken over Mark's business, restructuring it with a focus on smaller, sustainable projects. She was thriving, her confidence growing with each success. The loan still loomed, but we'd negotiated a payment plan with the bank, one that protected my savings while allowing Emily to rebuild. Lily and Ethan spent weekends with me, their laughter a constant now. We baked cookies, read stories, and stargazed on clear nights, just as I had with Emily. They asked about their father, and Emily answered honestly, her voice steady as she explained his absence. They were resilient, like their mother, and I knew they'd be okay. One evening, Emily arrived with a bottle of wine and a smile that reached her eyes. "Mom, I got a new contract today," she said, her voice vibrant. "It's enough to cover the next payment and then some." I hugged her, pride swelling in my chest. She'd found her strength, and I'd found my daughter again. We sat on my balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink. "I'm sorry for everything, Mom," she said, her voice soft. "I let Mark come between us. I won't let that happen again." I squeezed her hand, tears prickling my eyes. "We're here now," I said. "That's what matters." The holidays came again, and this time, I was welcomed into Emily's home. The house was alive with warmth. Lily and Ethan hung ornaments. Emily cooked a feast, and I felt David's presence in the laughter that filled the rooms. We were a family again, not perfect, but whole. As I watched my grandchildren play, I thought of the sacrifices we'd made, the pain we'd endured. Love had carried us through, a quiet strength that no loan or betrayal could break. I'd risked everything for Emily, and in doing so, I'd found something greater, the courage to trust, to forgive, and to start anew. The snow fell outside, soft and silent, but this time, it felt like a promise, a reminder that even the coldest winters give way to spring.